This is the Chapter 15, Segment 1 outline, and this chapter is all about social psychology, so the study of how the real, implied, or imagined presence of other people affects our behavior, beliefs, and attitudes. So, the first big category we cover is social perception. So this is the process of perceiving the behavior and inferring the motives of other people. And one of the main first things that we talk about that affects social interactions is impressions and physical appearance. So looking at people, we make inferences about them almost immediately based on their physical characteristics. We judge physically attractive people to be healthier, more successful, or mostly more socially skilled than unattractive people. So what makes a person attractive? So one factor is whether a person looks quote-unquote average. So if we take a computer and compile a lot of people's faces and make an average of that face will be judged to be more attractive by participants. And the more faces you average together, the more that perceived face will be deemed as attractive. So one of the reasons that computer average faces are seen as more attractive is facial symmetry. So the correspondence between the left and right side of the face. The more symmetrical a face is, the more attractive we see it as, and evolutionary psychologists believe this to be that a symmetrical face is a sign of good health. So accidents during development, such as nutrient shortages caused by an unhealthy diet or exposure to disease or parasites, may cause asymmetry. So a symmetrical face may have early on showed that this person experienced a good level of nutrition growing up, and they didn't have too many run-ins with germs or parasites and are relatively healthy for reproduction. A second reason that computer average faces look more attractive is similarity. We prefer faces that look more or less like our own. And also a third quality that makes a computer average face more attractive is the absence of blemishes. They think that skin is probably another good indicator that a person is in good health and had a healthy upbringing. Another aspect of appearance that we may judge on first impression is whether or not somebody has a baby face. So we tend to judge people who have a baby face as being more immature and less competent than people with mature-looking faces, and this plays a big role in politics. So, in a race between two political candidates, in 70% of the other congressional races that year, the candidate who was judged to have the more attractive face won that election. Obviously, a lot goes into a political campaign, but a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis is impression management. So the things we do and say to try to present a favorable image to other people. So with physical appearance, this is hygiene, grooming, exercise and diet to control body shape, choosing which clothes we would like to wear. Next, we go into attributions, which are easy to make and hard to shake. So attributions are judgments we make about why a person behaves in a particular way. So according to an attribution theory, which is a set of ideas about how we explain our own behavior and the behaviors of others. So we may say that a person behaves in a particular way because of the situation or the environment that person was in. So we may say that anyone would have acted the same in that situation. Or we could blame it on a person's particular behavior on their disposition. So behavioral traits specific to an individual, such as personality, can play a role in behavior. So how do we choose or decide which one we think it is when we see another person acting or even explaining our own behavior? In making attributions about other people's behavior, we commonly make a mistake called the fundamental attribution error, which is a tendency to attribute other people's behavior to their disposition rather than the situation surrounding them. But there are also times when we may underestimate the effects of disposition, and that's when we think about our own mistakes. So this is the actor-observer bias, and that's a tendency to explain away our own mistakes by attributing them to the environment and to attribute the mistakes of others to their disposition. So, in a short sense, my bad behavior is dictated by the situation, but your bad behavior is determined by your disposition. So, I'm a victim, you're a jerk. That's the way we sometimes perceive our behavior compared to other people. We also tend to congratulate ourselves. So this is the self-serving bias, which we attribute our successes to having a superior disposition. So I'm really good at math. That's why I did so well on the test, but attribute our failures to external forces. So that math test was really hard. So fundamental attribution error undoubtedly played a huge role in Jonestown and the people who belonged to the People's Temple. So they attributed evil motives to the people that were trying to help them, the congressmen, the CIA, the FBI, and instead of thinking that the concern of their families may be the reason why they're here. So Jones persuasively suggested to the followers that they do something really horrible, that they kill their children and themselves, and this actor-observer bias made them believe that they were trapped in this situation and that they had no other choice. They saw themselves as victims of circumstance trapped in a situation, and saw the outsiders as bad people with a disposition hostile to Jim Jones' mission. Next, we're going to get into different cultures foster different styles of attribution. So the book contains a figure, and it is one fish in front of a single fish in front of a group of other fish. They're all the same color, same type of fish, just one in front, followed by a couple other fish. Now, if somebody was asked what the first fish's role was in this picture, somebody from an individualist country would say that the fish in the front is leading the other fish. So, individualist countries like the United Kingdom and the United States, they tend to have a tendency to put your own goals and wishes ahead of the goals and wishes of the group. But if you ask someone from a collectivist culture, such as Guatemala, China, Mexico, they may think that the fish in front is being chased by the group. And a collectivism is the tendency to put the goals of the group ahead of your own goals. So, the next topic we're going to be talking about is attitudes affect behavior and behavior affect attitudes. So this goes into social attitudes and social roles, which are the behaviors and attitudes expected from someone with a particular social position. And this goes back to the famous study of the Stanford prison study. So, as some of you may well know, this was a activity where male college students were randomly assigned. They were all volunteers. They were randomly assigned to a role of either a prisoner or a guard in a mock prison. And they had prisoners in cells, and the guards were assigned to enforce the rules. They were even given uniforms, proper outfittings that would be appropriate for a prison guard or a prisoner. And the prisoners were also given numbers to replace their names. But the study was supposed to last for 2 weeks, but by only the second day, the study was starting to deteriorate. The prisoners were feeling genuinely oppressed and started rebelling, and were refusing to follow the directions. The guards became more upset and began calling for more punishments. So, in other words, the participants began taking on the attitudes appropriate to their role. And as far as we can tell, they genuinely believed that their counterparts were mean, dangerous people. Even researchers fell under this quote-unquote spell. They were suspicious of prisoners who were coming up to them and saying they wanted out of the study. They were distressed and they wanted to leave, and they thought that these people were faking it. So the plan was to run it for 2 weeks, but it was called off after 6 days. And interestingly enough, even the scientists began to actually adopt the attitudes appropriate to this make-believe role. Some people say that the prison study was unrealistic because people were assigned their roles, and that the situation was too artificial. But unfortunately, this can be applied to modern-day tragedies such as the Rwandan genocide. It was a separation of the Tutsis and the Hutus, and it killed 800,000 people in just 100 days in 1994. So something as simple as given roles where before a time when the Rwandan government started issuing ID cards, and everyone started identifying as these particular cultural groups, these people never saw themselves differently from one another. And surely this tendency was a big factor in the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, where perfectly ordinary, normally reliable army guards ended up systematically torturing prisoners. So this goes into cognitive dissonance, which is the physical discomfort of holding two conflicting beliefs. So how do these prisoners and guards explain why each regards the other as evil while regarding themselves as victims? So cognitive dissonance is an idea of discomfort, and it's the discomfort we feel if you're holding two different beliefs or attitudes that really can't be reconciled with one another. This is found in people who know that smoking is bad for them, but continue to smoke anyways. So cognitive dissonance can be seen in the behavior of American soldiers that were guarding prisoners at the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, and some suggest that developing the attitude that the prisoners were almost subhuman allowed the guards to avoid cognitive dissonance, to regard themselves as good American soldiers while mistreating Iraqis. This isn't even just seen in moral dilemmas, this is also seen in purchasing something. We experience buyer's remorse, which is the worry and doubt sometimes felt after a purchase. Buyer's remorse can be made worse if we learn new facts or hear more opinions from other people afterward. There's also effort justification, which is the tendency to alter our evaluation of some object or process based on how much effort we made for it. So if we really work hard for something, we're more likely to value it more. So that's why people, if they think they're buying an expensive meal, may have larger or better reviews of the food just because it costs more. So another interpretation of cognitive dissonance is just a way of allowing ourselves to be okay with making these choices that we know are wrong.